Hi, I'm Frankie. Today, I would like to share my personal views on a selected aspect of the 11 Malaysia Plan and the practice of knowledge management. Indeed, this is part 2 of my sharing session relating to the 11 Malaysia Plan. Now perhaps at this point, I would like to provide a quick introduction to the 11 Malaysia Plan. Now first of all, this plan covers the period from 2016 to 2020. And secondly, the theme of this plan is anchoring growth on people. And indeed, all of us see that this plan is the last leg of our journey towards becoming an advanced nation by 2020. Now this plan is divided into 6 strategic thrusts and 6 game changers. Now for today's session, I'll be focusing on strategic thrust number 3. And what is this? Now, thrust 3 says accelerating human capital development for an advanced nation. And this thrust is then divided into 4 key focus areas. In my previous sharing session, I have talked about key focus area C. So today, I'll be talking about key focus area D. And that is improving the quality of education for better student outcomes and institutional excellence, specifically relating to higher education. Now, to drive this key focus area D, as per the 11 Malaysia Plan, there are 2 specific strategies put in place. And that is strategy D3 and then strategy D4 as per the plan here. Now, for today's session, my concentration will be talking about the practice of knowledge management and how it can significantly strengthen these 2 strategies and how it can add real value to the strategy for the purpose of ultimately achieving the aspiration as listed in key focus area D. Now of course, to be even more specific, my focus will be like more of looking at how the practice of knowledge management can add real value to the graduates, to the programs, and of course to the institution of higher education. So perhaps at this point in time, I will share with you a practical definition of what is the practice of knowledge management really all about in the context of higher education. Now, the practice of knowledge management, or POKM in short, is about firstly developing 8 highly focused capabilities. Secondly, required to systematically manage critical knowledge. And finally, to achieve sustainable performance, to achieve breakthrough performance. So in this context, really, you'll find therefore the 8 highly focused capabilities are as follows, as per what I have prepared on the board here. The first, knowledge identification. What it suggests therefore is that the graduate, this is what it means, the graduate must have highly self-driven and proactive mindset to specifically, consistently identify what would be the critical knowledge required by the person to achieve work goals when he goes to the workforce. At the same time, in other words, while he's a student before leaving the university, knowledge identification would therefore mean to say that he must be able to identify what critical knowledge he has and what is a knowledge gap that prevent him to do well, for example, in the university program. So he must be able to carry out his own knowledge identification to establish what knowledge is needed to establish his existing level of knowledge, to establish, of course, ultimately, the knowledge gap that's preventing him to achieve what he intends to achieve, as in the program or subsequently at the workplace. Now, this is the first capability that the person must have. Right? Secondly, it's known as knowledge acquisition. In this context, it means to say that the day he starts working, he must realize that he must have this open mindset to continue to learn. Because things change, knowledge change at the speed of light. So henceforth, the mindset of knowledge acquisition refers to his ability to continuously acquire import knowledge. The same goes to the fact that when he is a student in the university, so essentially what happens is this: he must have this knowledge acquisition mindset, suggesting that the learning process is ongoing. University prepares him, but the real challenge is when he is at the workplace. That means when he starts to work. The third is called knowledge application. This is very critical. Now, as a student, many students for the matter, when they are in the university program, their mindset is more like acquiring knowledge, and then for the purpose of applying this knowledge to get good grades in the university. Right? Now, however, in reality, the student must think at a more macro-strategic level, whereby I acquire knowledge in the university with the ultimate purpose of preparing. Whatever I acquire here, I'm preparing myself to actually apply this knowledge, not just to get better score, but eventually to make sure this knowledge are transferred to the workplace, to ensure that it can drive my performance at the workplace. So in other words, number 3, called knowledge application, the intensity of applying. It is not how much we know as a graduate that makes us excellent. It's how much we apply consistently with great intensity that make us a performer. The fourth, practice of knowledge sharing. Now, the graduate must have this mindset that for a person to do well, the person at the workplace especially must learn to collaborate with all the co-workers, must learn to share ideas and to build on each other's ideas, because this becomes the eventual platform for the student to pursue knowledge innovation. So while sharing is great in the university, it is more critical when they are at the workplace. So they must therefore have this mindset, habits, and capability of actively promoting knowledge sharing. Then you have number 5, knowledge development. Now, knowledge development relates to a scenario whereby at the point of time you enter the workforce, I was saying earlier on, you will find very quickly there are a lot of knowledge that you have gathered at the university. A lot of them quickly may become redundant as years goes by at the workplace. So henceforth, to enhance consistently my entry level, to enhance my capability, I must have the capacity to keep on developing myself. And the 3 dimension would be develop my conceptual, behavioral, and technical abilities. We shall talk a bit more later over here. Now, so the next one would be the practice of knowledge innovation. We know, therefore, this is the knowledge-based economy, but the fact is, it is knowledge-based, innovation-driven. In other words, yes, we require knowledge, but knowledge becomes the platform, the springboard, or to leapfrog innovation. So in other words, graduates must have this mindset, self-driven, proactive, collaborative sharing, so that finally can drive innovation. And finally, the last 2. Now, for the graduate to be successful, the graduate must realize that as he begins to work, he must realize this, that really his real asset, it's actually the critical knowledge stored in his mind. And henceforth, he must have ability, capabilities to actually preserve his critical knowledge so that he's able to use and reuse this critical knowledge instead of reinventing them all the time. And finally, knowledge management. As he progresses in his life, especially in the working career, he will begin to realize here that finally there is a direct correlationship between accumulated, consolidated, critical knowledge and sustainable performance. So we must therefore learn techniques. How do I measure objectively over the years the growth of my critical knowledge? So in a nutshell, the practice of knowledge management is really about developing 8 highly focused capabilities to assist us to systematically manage our critical knowledge, so that this critical knowledge being organized and consolidated all the time, it's always relevant to the needs of the economy, and therefore allowing me to have a focus to achieve what we call as breakthrough or sustainable performance. Now, having given you a very quick overview with regard to what is the practice of knowledge management all about, let me now relate how this practice can actually strengthen, can actually add real value to the strategies over here. Now, let's look at the strategy D3, put in place to achieve key focus area D. It says here, the strategy is raising 3 things: quality of graduates, secondly, quality of programs, and strengthening research for innovation. Alright, now, but under this strategy D3, there are 5 key sub-strategy or bullet points down here. I will now share my views relating to each one of these 5 key points under this strategy D3. First, it says, developing holistic, entrepreneurial, and balanced graduate. I will first give my view on developing holistic and balanced graduates first. This first part of it first. Now, so essentially, the big question is this: a graduate. How do we consider the graduate to be, in this case, holistic and balanced? Now, my personal opinion, for the student to be considered, or the graduate eventually to be considered holistic and at the same time balanced, the person must have, in my view, must have this. The person must have 1, high level of conceptual abilities. Secondly, strong behavioral abilities. Thirdly, strong technical abilities. And of course, driven by strong ethics and moral values. Now, most important in this case here is that graduates to be holistic, to be well balanced in a sense here. Firstly, conceptual abilities means to say that a graduate must have real thinking ability, analytical ability, or for the matter, visioning ability. And this refers to the mindset, to the capacity of the graduate to think strategic, to be macro in its analysis. Secondly, behavioral abilities. Now, in this context, the graduate must certainly be able to interact, interface with the co-workers, with customers, with people around him at the workplace. So in this context, we are talking about leadership skills. We are talking about essentially communication dynamics. We are talking about the ability to present, presentation skills, persuasion for the matter over here, interfacing with people. These are generally known in the industry as soft skills. And thirdly, technical abilities. Obviously, the student and the graduate that comes out from the university must be technically sound. In other words, a subject matter expert in his own right, or a content specialist, depending on which program that the person have gone through. So in other words, to be holistic and balanced means conceptual, behavioral, at the same time, technical abilities. And to further strengthen this conceptual, behavioral, and technical abilities of the students, and graduate in this case here, what is important is this conceptual, behavioral, technical aspect must be significantly strengthened by the person's self-driven mindset, the person's proactive mindset to systematically manage critical knowledge. Because surely, for the graduate to be relevant to this economy, this is called the knowledge-based, innovation-driven economy. So surely, the graduate must be a knowledge worker, must be an innovative knowledge professional. So in this sense, if you're operating in the knowledge-based, innovation-driven economy, so surely we must be able to systematically manage our critical knowledge to drive performance. We are not operating in the production-based economy whereby we talk about people management, people chasing management. So therefore, the student to be relevant to this economy, the student must be self-driven, the graduate must be proactive, collaborative, and innovative. So that's my view, all right, on how the practice of KM can strengthen the graduate to be more holistic and balanced in their views and mindsets and skills. Now next, entrepreneurial. Okay, in this context over here, if students at the same time, not all students want to be entrepreneur, but a fair amount, gradually and progressively, many graduates may want to be more entrepreneurial. So what does it mean? My view, it goes like this. Now, in the mind of the graduate, entrepreneurship must not be seen as like a no-choice scenario. The mindset must be from the beginning that entrepreneurship is indeed a career of choice. And by mind, I must be the creator of jobs when I go to the economy. I must not be the seeker of job, not looking for a job, but I'm creating job, driving economy myself. So in this context, to have this entrepreneurship mindset, surely the graduate must realize that we are now operating in this knowledge-based economy. We are offering knowledge products to well-informed customers. And so therefore, I'll begin to realize that my ability to manage critical knowledge is the most fundamental capability that I must have in order that I can have this real entrepreneurship in my mind, the mindset. Of course, during the course that I'm in the university, in the program, it would be great if, for example, the students will be exposed to first talks from industrial leaders, or number two, for the matter, having visits or assignment at the industry level. So this will give me exposure, or even for the matter, having real case study relating to entrepreneurship and me getting involved to make decision in this case study. So that will of course provide an environment to groom or nurture graduates to be entrepreneurial. So in conclusion, bottom line will be, if you put everything in place, it means developing holistic, entrepreneurial and balanced graduate. So it's a combination of entrepreneurship mindset plus conceptual, behavioral, technical mindset driven by strong ethics and strong moral values for students. Alright, now, so this is how the practice of KM can really enhance this part of it. Okay. Next, the next bullet point says aligning curriculum with industry needs to prevent skills mismatch. This is real great, but I want to just highlight this from my personal perspective. It says here to prevent skills mismatch. Now, of course, to prevent skills mismatch is what we strive to achieve. But actually, this is a real challenge, because in reality, if you put down as to significantly minimize skills mismatch, that will be more doable in this case here. Now why? Let me give you my views on this now. First of all, what really happened is this. The curriculum developer conceptualize and crystallize that, okay, these are the programs I believe will be practically useful, relevant to the economy. and I want to offer this to the students. So for the point, the ideas are conceptualized. From the point when the program is conceptualized, to the point that it is developed and finally secure the relevant authorities' approval to be launched, there will be some time lag. So during this time lag, changes would also have taken place at the industrial level. That's one aspect. Secondly, once the program is ready, it is now offered to the students. At the point of offering, the student comes in. Then what happens? The student goes through the curriculum, perhaps over a period of 3 years or 4 years, and then again, there's a second level of time lag. So in that sense, by the time the student now becomes a graduate and enters the workforce, so henceforth, because of changes at the economic level and it moves very fast, so certainly there will still be some degree of mismatch, inverted commas, with the outcomes we have from the students level with the requirement of the industry. And I believe that this is highly practical. That's how it works in reality. However, of course, this is still something that we have to pursue. And to make it happen, the roles of the curriculum developer are important. But on the other hand, the roles of the graduates are equally important in this context. Now let me share my views on this. And it goes like this. Now, as far as curriculum developers are concerned, of course, first of all, they must be close to the industry in order that they can develop curriculum that are relevant for the changing economy. Close means to say there must be some form of attachment on their side, visits, frequent visits with the industry, field visits, forum exchange, inviting industrial leaders to be faculty members, etc., taking consulting assignments. So this closeness with the industry will surely provide lots of input for them to develop the curriculum. That's why sending even academics to learning at the private sector will be very important, because then they'll be able to absorb all those critical success factors as per the requirement of industry to be incorporated into the program in this case. However, there potentially could be academics who are very experienced, 30 years in a university. So when you talk about experience, when it talks about the technique of delivery, they have it. They have good techniques of delivery, good techniques of research perhaps, but a person who is experienced in academics in the university does not mean to say that the content is equally, inverted commas, really connected to the industry. Because over the years, for a person to be really very relevant, for academics to be truly relevant to the industry, the closeness is very, very important. So, okay, great. So the role of the curriculum will be making themselves first relevant, mindset and knowledge. Then only he or she will be in the position to make the curriculum relevant. Okay, now look at the role of the graduate, and that's very significant. Now, from the very beginning, the graduate must totally realize while he is in the program, the graduate must realize that, okay, now I acquire all this knowledge from this program, and the graduate's mindset must be prepared in this manner. He must know, as I enter the workforce, a lot of things that I learn in the university, a lot of things as I progressively work in the workforce would be overwritten by changing knowledge happening at the workplace. So therefore, the graduate must have the ability to apply the practice of knowledge management, whereby he will take the body of knowledge that he acquires in the university as his really base knowledge, base fundamental knowledge. As he starts working, he must now have that specific mindset to continuously import knowledge real time, develop knowledge real time, and take all this real time knowledge that the person, the graduate in this case, acquire and build it, put on top of the base knowledge that he has acquired in the university. So the act and the process of acquiring constant knowledge, building on the huge base knowledge that he has acquired, will help him to dramatically, continuously innovate. And if he does that, that means he's actually making an attempt to make sure whatever that he's learning in the university is always kept relevant to the industry. Because why? Because university provides me huge infrastructure-based knowledge, and then now, and it's very useful for me, it increased my entry level, and now I keep on sitting, building and building. So that whole spectrum of knowledge becomes always relevant to the workplace. So in that sense, the practice of knowledge management assists the student to contribute, assists the graduate to contribute to this factor. That means to say, aligning the curriculum with the industrial needs. And the student or graduate in this case plays a major role to prevent, inverted commas, skills mismatch. Because in this context, he sees the direct connection between learning and application. What I learn, apply. What I apply, I build on. I keep on building in this manner. But if the graduate, if the person doesn't put in place the practice of knowledge management, he may potentially look at the program in the university and the workplace as two major segments of his life. And this is wrong. This is wrong. It's a progression. Once you look at it as two major segments, that means the end of the program is like a terminal, a full stop. No, it's actually the beginning of the real journey in life, contributing to the society. Right now, so henceforth, the practice of knowledge management can significantly enhance this point to continuously align curriculum with industrial needs to prevent or to significantly minimize skills mismatch. Point 3. It says here, creating massive open online courses for broader access and visibility. Now, to be very specific, creating massive open online courses. This process, my personal view is, does not directly raise the quality of programs. However, what it does do in this case is, it does enhance significantly the reach, R-E-A-C-H, the reach of the program. Meaning to say, it is like distributed technology, right, whereby we can distribute the content to as many people as possible globally at obviously a very much lower cost. Now, in that sense, it is like exporting Malaysians' content, Malaysians' expertise globally. However, to strengthen this point here, that is to ensure that these massive open online courses provide greater access, and to drive this and relate this to raising the quality of the programs, I want to give my views in this context in this manner. First of all, for this to be successful, it is important that the university or the institution of higher education must be clear. Online courses, that is just a technology. It is a process of reaching to students globally. What is key? Number one is this. We must make sure that this technology is supported by the distinctive competency of that institution of higher education. So what do I mean? It means to say it is generally not possible, that a university could be strong in all the various faculties. So henceforth, the university must leverage on those key faculties that are unique, whereby it has strong content for distribution. So leveraging on distinctive competency, number one. Number two, the content that is to be distributed must be in a very highly structured and modular approach to facilitate learning, to facilitate absorption, and to relate to the pace of the learner effectively. And number three, very objective evaluation must be put in place so that the learner will go through self-evaluation to ensure that the person progress effectively in the entire process. But more important, number 4 is the content. The content to be distributed. There must be some form of customization. Generally, if we talk about a content for the whole world, then this may not be very doable in the long run, because in every segment of market over the world that we enter, there will be certain requirements in terms of illustration, customized or tailor-made to local needs, etc. So we may have a strong base content. However, added to this, we will need to do some form of a customization, illustration to meet some of their local needs, so that it will be like seen as content that actually meet the requirement of the needs of the people in those countries here. So some customization would be critical. And then finally, to make this really workable and to really export our content globally, consistently, and be successful, it is important to have a strong, what we call as alumni, which means to say students that have left the program, and we capture their testimony, track their career development, because this will strengthen the credibility of the content that we are putting in this case for market consumptions globally. All right, now. So here, in this context, to make this workable, the practice of knowledge management will play a great role. Why? Because here are mistakes that we make, initial mistakes that we made here. We must be able to turn these mistakes into lessons learned. We also develop best practices. So as we enter into more geographical area, we'll be able to leverage on these lessons learned, leverage on these best practices. So the practice of knowledge management can certainly strengthen this bullet point number 3. Next, 4. 4 says improving research, development, and commercialization activities to accelerate innovation. Now, of course, we know if I want to make sure that I do R&D and commercialization from the beginning, whatever I do, whatever we do, we must be focusing on the actual challenges of the industry. And we take that as a starting point, in terms of reference for me to create solution to meet the needs of this industry, so that we play a direct role to enable industry to be more competitive. Right? That will be given, which means to say that's exactly what we must be doing, because R&D cannot be disconnected from the beginning with the industry. So we must be providing solution, addressing needs of industry, playing a role to make it competitive, strengthening industry, the process, of course, sustaining and strengthening our economy in the country. That's great. However, now, let me share my opinion on this now. See, in this context, in order that this R, research, development, and commercialization initiative can really drive innovation, this is my view. First, in a university, all the people that are involved in these numerous projects of R&D and commercialization, all these teams of people must be really, number 1, fully connected. When I say fully connected, it means to say they really must have very strong mindset, very strong culture of sharing with each other. In other words, to say, whatever I'm doing in this particular R&D initiative, I must share consistently what I do with you. Why? Because there's always a possibility that whatever I'm doing here, I can add value to what you are doing on the other side. So the act of sharing will assist each of these project teams or these communities, these various communities, to build constantly on the ideas of each other. Right? So that by building ideas of each other, they can really accelerate innovation. And the worst thing to happen is that each of these R&D commercialization team, they are all working in silo. I'm doing what I'm doing because I insist that my terms of reference and yours are totally different. That cannot be the case. surely we can build on some ideas of each other. So if we work in silo, surely you will prevent breakthrough innovation. If I work in silo, surely there will be duplication of resources. If I work in silo, certainly I will not be able, as an institution as a whole, to tap on each other's critical knowledge asset to grow tremendously. Likewise the same. Inter-university collaboration. The same. I'm doing research in this area because at the end of the day, all institutions of higher education must be seen as one huge research family, because ultimately everybody having the same mindset, that is to be able to add real value to the industry, to drive the industry, to drive the economy of the country, moving towards 2020. And so there must be this kind of mindset. So inter-university collaboration and coordination, the strength of this can really accelerate R&D and commercialization work in the country. So in addition, of course, to inter-university, we can talk about university with government agency, with the various appropriate organization. The message I want to highlight is this. While we always talk about research, development, and commercialization, I want to strengthen the fact that collaboration among teams are important. Building of ideas are important. Challenging of views are important. Working in silo must definitely be out. That is not the way forward. And this is something must be keep on strengthening in this particular context. Because why? We are all knowledge workers, and knowledge workers need to be collaborative at all times to drive our innovation. So that's why I want to highlight this particular point. Finally, point number 5. It says here, enhancing the global prominence of Malaysia as an education hub. Now, this certainly is in the correct direction. But let me also share some of my views relating to point number 5. Actually, to promote Malaysia, the country, as a brand name in education, through marketing, through promotional materials, a roadshow, or exhibition, those marketing, those promotional activities, those are not the challenge. What does it mean? It means it is not difficult to talk about promoting ourselves, going to roadshows, or visits, or fairs, student fairs around the world. That's not a challenge. The real challenge is delivering what we promise. That's the real challenge. Alright? If you want to talk about building global brand name, and how does it work? Number 1, as I was mentioned just earlier on, the first thing is, if I want to position, first of all, the country as what we call as a recognized, well-respected education hub, the first thing is, each of these participating institution of higher education must first identify their core faculty and their core expertise for promotion. Now, what does it mean? It means to say they must be able to see what really are their highly differentiated features. What are their uniqueness? Is it their content? Is it their teaching methodology? Is it the research environment? What really is that area of uniqueness? And this is the first most important starting point. Must really gather the real value propositions. Because as you want to promote the others, the receiver on the other side, will be asking the question, what really is so unique about you, so differentiated about you, that make you outstanding and stands out in the first instance? So the basic preparatory work is very, very key. That is the first part. Second part, once we are really clear about our value proposition to the world, the second part is fulfillment. when the students come in to the university, now our journey starts. Over the next 3 years, 4 years or more, fulfilling the promises that we make. Now to fulfill the promises that we make over here, number 2, the institution must have very strong student-centric culture. Meaning to say, therefore, they must have very strong unit within the university. They focus on taking care of international students, pastoral care, for example, of international students, because there will always be this cultural diversity. The culture shock will come in, and this will affect students' performance. So, taking real care of these international students, ensuring they really can gel in, will become very, very critical. That's delivering our promises. Third, as this international student goes through the program, we must be mindful. End of the day, we are actually molding this student, nurturing this student, and finally, when they are graduates of the program, what happens? They go back to their respective countries to deliver what they have learned, which means to apply what they have learned. Therefore, it means to say that the lecturers, the academics that are responsible for nurturing these students, the academics must really have very good knowledge relating to the economies of those countries that the students come from. Meaning to say, incorporating, for instance, case study, assignments that relate back to the home country. It's critical because ultimately that's where they will be contributing. So in other words, it is not about promoting a program. It's about really the infrastructure must be ready, both the product, which is the program, the physical, the cultural dimension, the system process, and the mindset and knowledge of the academics. They must be ready to ensure that we produce the right student outcomes in a sense. Next, what happened next? The next issue in this case is, many a times, if you want to look at international marketing of students, English language is very key. Because why? As we know, global knowledge, a large chunk of global knowledge are sitting on this operating language known as English. So the command of English, the mastery of English, that is very crucial to ensure that these students and these international students really feel that they are here and they're experiencing something really worthwhile. English being a real strong medium of communication for these people, because many students, whether they are from the Middle East, whether they are from Southeast Asia for the matter, or in Central Asia, when they come to Malaysia, generally they also look forward to learn English at the same time. So good command of English is very key. In fact, that is very crucial if we want to talk about branding Malaysian education globally. Next, it is possible. It is therefore possible. Even the Middle East, the countries in the Middle East, they are still different in terms of the level of economic progress. The countries in Central Asia are also different in terms of their progress economically. So it's still possible that the student that comes in may come from an economy that they believe is more advanced than Malaysia. And that's possible, obviously. So in this context, their mindset will be, what have you to offer me? You know, because my country economically is even more advanced than Malaysia as a country. So how do we attract these students to come in? The answer, yes, there is still a way to do so. Because when the university or the institution of higher education position themselves overseas, the main focus is, well, yes, you may have a point there about economy, but I want to highlight to you that this institution of higher education indeed has very high level of knowledge content, very high level of knowledge, excellence in this very specific field. Not all the fields, but these very specific fields. And we have great testimony from the publication we have done globally and gotten global recognition, publication, research findings, and we are very close to industry. So yes, indeed, we in the university is a knowledge-based, innovation-driven organization, and as such, we have created very highly innovative programs, very highly innovative content, strong and concentrated for the world. So therefore, that goes back to our distinctive competency. So therefore, it's still possible, really, in reality, that we can attract students from more advanced economy than Malaysia, because the university must position themselves as an institution with high concentration of critical knowledge, and that is unique in this region. There must be a positioning, a branding for that matter. So all in all, you find therefore that the university must therefore embrace the practice of knowledge management to make sure that we can preserve this critical knowledge, the mindset of innovation, and looking at it as knowledge products to be offered to the world. There are challenges, but certainly the right way forward. Now, so these are some of my views I want to share with you relating to how managing knowledge can assist us to strengthen strategy D3. Let me move on to strategy D4. Now you see that on this side here, here it says strengthening the institution of higher education governance and financial sustainability towards institutional excellence. And the first bullet point says empowering public universities through earned autonomy within the regulatory framework. This is also indeed a very good direction, because we are operating in the production-based economy? No, we are operating in the knowledge-based economy. Only in the production-based economy we talk about controlling, strict control of such institutions, micromanaging them. So here is good, because we're talking about ensuring that the various institutions of higher education have more decision rights themselves. However, of course, to ensure that they're able to really manage these more independent decision rights, the university must, of course, strengthen their capacity. For example, one, more transparency must take place. Number two, the university at the same time must significantly enhance their overall distinctive competency. Now let's look at this context here. A university must be a knowledge-based organization. The people, both the academics and the non-academics, because many times we talk about institutional higher education, our focus a lot is really on the academics. But the truth of the matter really is, both are equally important. The academics deliver the content, but the non-academics play a role to manage, to administer, coordinate, do a lot of things before academics comes in place. So both groups equally important. So the point I want to stress is that both groups must be knowledge workers, practicing, embracing the practice of knowledge management to ensure they're able to manage critical knowledge. So henceforth, the point is this: in order that we can build and strengthen the university must have the ability to systematically consolidate, integrate all the critical knowledge. For example, in the practice of knowledge management, it will be very appropriate for all institutions of higher education to create their own knowledge directory, which means subject matter experts directory. So you would have a knowledge portal, and all those subject matter experts, what they do, all those are all consolidated together all the time, known as your knowledge directory. Now, so in this context, my view in this particular situation would be this: that end of the day, the university to strengthen themselves, must also have what we call as more innovative initiative, more innovative programs. Now, let me highlight this as a case in point. Now, many a times, universities have this kind of a strategy, that is, in order that we play a role to make sure that our students, given here, right, better student outcomes. So henceforth, in many of the programs, they will come up with internship programs or industrial training. And let me comment on this slightly. While this idea is good to have 6 months of internship program or 6 months of industrial training for the student, preparing them or to enhance them in terms of better student outcomes. Right now, the truth of the matter is this: many a times, when the students are sent to a specific organization, the receiving organization most of the time may end up providing the student with all those basic jobs, highly routine. Alright, you come for 6 months, what you do in these 6 months is first, you do photocopying of materials, you just do compiling of report. So the students, yes, I am going for industrial training, but the truth of the matter is that I don't learn much at all because of the jobs that's given to me. Why does it happen this way? Because many organizations may say, you know, we are all rushing for time. Our deadlines is always yesterday, and we have really no time to supervise these people in the first instance. And so therefore, since I'm one of the partners to the university, I will provide whatever I can for these people. And some of the companies even look at them as nuisance, even the companies. The students as nuisance. And this is quite common. And so to make this really happen, a few steps must be taken in place. First, the lecturers in charge must really, before sending students to the organization, the lecturer in charge must first of all have real dialogue session with the organization. Develop a list of outcomes. What are the key result areas need to be achieved? And what are some of the indicators of progress of students? So more specific discussion must take place before the students are sent. And the organization must also realize what kind of perhaps limited resources they must still put in place to enable the student to have a fruitful journey during industrial training. So the initial agreement, the initial meeting of minds between organization and the university, pretty important. One. Secondly, when the student goes there, what happens will be the student must also be briefed about what need to be done, what need not to be done at that inverted commas 6-month workplace. Third, important is the review. We cannot just do review at the end of the 6 months, because then it could be too late. We should start review on the first month alone, so that when review is done, there's anything that is escalated to the supervisors or to the lecturers in charge, from the students to lecturer in charge, then action can then be taken. Again, dialogue session with the receiving organization. So the point we are saying is this, the point I'm highlighting is this: while it's a great idea, the truth of the matter is, to operationalize it, we still require detailed working relationship. Because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that for the receiving organization, indeed, the student during the 6 months had contributed. And for the students, indeed, he has put some part of his knowledge into practice, and he learned and reinforced himself. And finally, for the university, I'm able to ensure that I position ourselves as an institution that is producing graduates relevant to the industry. Now, that's what it means. So the point I'm raising here is that it can strengthen this point, because we are saying that we want the university to be more empowered. To be more empowered, the university, in this context over here, must be able to strengthen their capacity and seen as they're able to drive their university effectively. All right. This is just one of the views I want to share here. Finally, the last point, he says, reducing dependency on government funding with diversified income sources. All right. So I offer this opinion from this angle. There are two dimensions here. The first dimension is that the institution of higher education, certainly as time goes by, must be able to drive operational excellence. And this is one of the major business case of practicing or embracing the practice of knowledge management. Because the act of systematically managing critical knowledge directly assists an organization to drive operational excellence. Now how? First, the university must be very mindful. Any specific mistakes made, any mistakes are made, whether it's academic or non-academic, any mistakes made must be immediately translated into lessons learned. First, mistakes translated into lessons learned, first captured. Knowledge preservation. Secondly, it must be immediately distributed to everyone in the university, called knowledge sharing. Third, after being shared, it must be immediately adopted, known as knowledge application. Fourth, once it's adopted, in this case repeatedly, we want to see the connection between number of lessons learned, adopted constantly, and how it reduces repeated mistake, called the practice of knowledge measurement. Now, so in the context of an institution of higher education, being a knowledge-based organization, surely we do not want to make repeated mistakes, because we are the role model. We are the people that are responsible to create the whole generation of forward-looking, forward-thinking, innovative graduates for the country. And so henceforth, to begin with, the academics and the non-academics in the university must start to look at driving operational excellence by reducing repeated mistakes. Next, best practices. To drive operational excellence, what could happen in the universities is this. You could have, for instance, one lecturer who is doing pretty well, and the programs are welcomed by students because of the manner that he conducts the program, the techniques that the person uses, the content that he delivers, and the kind of activities he put in place in his or her program. And always repeatedly get great score. But then if another lecturer takes over the program, the result is different, the reaction from students are different. So surely different lecturers, different researchers within the university would have their own best practices. However, if these best practices are only stored in the heads of that individual, we call this fragmented knowledge. And if knowledge is fragmented, stored only in individual heads of academics, it is not going to strengthen the university. And so therefore, the university must embrace the practice of knowledge management to ensure that best practices are then transferred all over the university. Local solution, local knowledge, global application, global adoption within, global means within the whole university. So in other words, moving around critical knowledge, it's very key to make sure that we drive operational excellence, because in summary, to drive operational excellence, to reduce the cost of running a university, we will need to make sure that we manage repeated mistakes, we manage best practices, among others. That's one part of the story. The second part here talks about reducing dependency on funding. Great, but the second part says we've diversified income sources. Now, in the practice of knowledge management, we have to manage our critical knowledge to accelerate, improve responsiveness to the customer. So what does it mean then? It therefore means to say, when we embrace practice of knowledge management, the university must start to think. Alright, now, let's first look at our university and look at what really are all the critical knowledge within the university that is of real value to the economy. In other words, I must start to consolidate, integrate, after identifying all the critical knowledge hotspots within the university. I must know how to package them, integrate them into knowledge products. Because only when I'm able to come up with innovative knowledge products can I or can the university really offer these knowledge products for sale to the industry, to the market. So in that sense, first, of course, we can enhance our income sources through specialized consulting assignments driven by a pool of people. But again, we must not provide general consulting. We must be looking at two things: matching what really is in demand and must match with what really are our ability, expertise here. So we need to have a product. We need to market the product. We need to position the product. So consulting. Or we can talk about R&D. Again the same. We must define clearly what is the current and the potential needs of the economy of specific industry. Or we can talk about organizing events for the matter. We can talk about coming out with knowledge products in the form of publications, in the form of DVDs, etc. So essentially, the only way we can significantly improve this part, diversify income resources, is to start thinking, what very specifically do we have as real intellectual capital, real critical knowledge that is needed to add real value to this economy, to these companies operating in these highly challenging times. And I'm sure the university, being a knowledge-based organization, if we think hard enough, if we focus hard enough, if we're able to consolidate and integrate hard enough, we definitely will be able to come up with solutions. Most important is this: the mindsets of the academics. The mindsets of the academics must be totally reconfigured to focus on content. Is not just for academic consumption. Content is really used to drive industry and economy in this knowledge-based, innovation-driven society. And that is very, very key. The reconfiguration of mindsets are important. Alright, now, so at this point, I have just provided an overview of some of my views and opinions, entirely mine, alright, in relation to this particular topic, which is the 11 Malaysia Plan, the third strategic thrust, and specifically on the higher education aspect of key focus area D. Alright, so of course, at this point of time, really, I thank you for spending time, investing your time to be with me during this whole sharing session. And of course, I look forward to your end over here, meeting up with you in the very near future. Alright, now this is Frankie. At this point of time, I want to say to you bye-bye and cheers. As I say, see you real soon. Alright?